My name is Leticia Dominguez, and I'm the Behavioral Health Manager for the Bexar County Department of Behavioral Health. And I am also a licensed clinical social worker. I'm going to be serving as a monitor this afternoon. So today's topic, building support systems to help sorry, that's not it. That was the last time.
We'll take
I wanted to
it.
make sure that you're okay. So today's topic is recovery communities, mental illness, living in community, and reintegration. It will focus on the different initiatives that are happening in San Antonio and Bexar County. So our panelists here are housing visionaries that embrace the idea of incorporating supportive services as the key to successful outcomes. Just to give you an idea of how fortunate you are to have this panel here, think of the NBA when they send their top players to the Olympics. They call them the Dream Team. This is our own Dream Team here, the Housing Visionary Dream Team. So it is my pleasure to introduce Gilbert Gonzales, who's the Director of Behavioral Health for Bexar County, Nathan Howe, Senior Project Manager for HKS Architects, Mark Carmona, Chief Housing Officer for the City of San Antonio, and Edward Gonzalez, Executive Director for Town Twin Village. Gilbert?
Good afternoon. Is this thing on? Do you even need it? Hello, testing? Okay, we're on. Hi, I'm Gilbert Gonzalez. I'm the Director of the Behavioral Health Department. Did I do something wrong?
The man knows how to drop a mic.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. See, my mama taught me well.
What about throwing?
Some things. So there's a couple of things that we're going to do today. We're very glad to have you here. I'm so happy to see you here and the entire Pathways to Hope conference. Doug, you're amazing. Everybody knows that, and so all of you. So there's a couple of things we're going to do today. One, we're going to talk a little bit about mental illness, and two, we're going to talk about living in community with mental illness. And the panel you have right here is amazing. So I'm going to start real quickly with mental illness. I want you to imagine a traffic light. You get to the traffic light, there's red light, yellow light, and green light. Well, in the red light, what does that mean? Stop. So when we stop, that means if we've got a mental illness, we need help. We're inpatient. We've got doctors, we've got nurses, we're receiving medications, we're receiving constant treatment. If we do our jobs right, then we get to the yellow light. What does yellow light mean? Proceed with caution. We still need the support. There's still things that have to happen, people that you have to lean on. And if we do our jobs right, then we get to green. And in green, now we're doing supportive housing. Now we're doing supportive employment. Now we're doing groups. Now we're doing all these things. Think of that as an analogy in housing. One of the challenges that we've had during our mental health crisis that started way before COVID was the fact that we did not have enough services. We did not have enough longevity for the treatment for our loved ones. And most importantly, we did not have the continuity of care that is needed, because we all know if you're sick and you go to the hospital, you're not going to get well in 3 days or 4 days when they give you that discharge, and that's good if you're lucky. So what we're going to talk about is living in community and some of the things that we are planning on doing. We meaning a strong partnership between the City of San Antonio, Bexar County, and our partners. Some of the things that are currently happening right now. So we'll talk a little bit about some history, what Commissioners Court has directed us to do, and then what our partners are adding to here. So a little bit of history. Some of you may know a couple of years ago, state of Texas authorized $337 million for the building of a state hospital. Brand new. Yay, right? But wait, the challenge is that they build a new hospital with no additional capacity. None. Okay, so, all right, we can live with that. However, what also happened is an opportunity of a lifetime has developed. And that opportunity is that in communicating, in working with the state has agreed for us to look at the feasibility of utilizing the hospital grounds and the hospital buildings that are vacated, and actually they're almost vacated now. And as the state hospital, the current state hospital moves to the new state hospital, has anybody been out there? You can see the beautiful building. It's going to be great. The estimated occupancy time is January of 2024, so we're getting very close. So what we have now is we're going to be talking about what's going to happen then. So there's a lot of things going on. So Commissioners Court in the session of February 22nd, 2022, it's taken a little bit of planning. They've directed the Bexar County Behavioral Health Department in partnership with the city and the county and our other stakeholders to do two things. Number one, to look at the feasibility of building a psychiatric hospital, okay? Number two, to engage consultants to look at the effective reutilization of the property and the land and the buildings to create a multi-use environment. Okay, so I'm going to leave it right there. So because we've got such a rich panel, I'm going to talk a little bit about the panel now. So we have Edward Gonzales, Town Twin. Anybody familiar with Town Twin? If not, you're going to be in a little bit. So imagine the continuum of needing help, not being able to get help for an extended period of time. Remember I said 1 or 2, 3 days on your discharge? Well, we're talking projectively of a length of stay of anywhere from 30, 60, 90, 120 days and beyond. So we're implementing that. So Edward, who is no stranger, a good friend of mine, no stranger to a lot of work, and boy, does he have a lot of work. So he's going to tell us about the work that he's done. And then we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Carmona, who is literally directing the city's housing efforts. This man knows what he's doing, trust me. So he's gonna kind of take us in the end in terms of what we're doing. Because remember the red light. What the challenge that we've had is we provide this treatment for a little bit, and then we assume, oh, they're kind of doing okay. But the reality with mental illness and serious mental illness is, in many instances, we owe an individual the support throughout the phases of recovery, from initial early identification to access to care to continuity of care, for as long as it takes. That's what it's going to take to do that. So then we have the last member of our panel, Nathan Howell, who is with HKS, and probably the man with the greatest pressure right now. Because, Nathan, we're going to ask you and your group to design a community mental health wellness center that incorporates things like a full social environment, things like the fostership of collaborative efforts with the entire city and the county, things like relationships, a social environment. We all know that if we don't have relationships, we're going to be lonely. And with loneliness, loneliness is not even, it's a problem. Worse than that, loneliness will kill. So there has to be a milieu development. There has to be a completeness of thoroughness. There has to be a facility, a wellness campus that not only enriches and motivates, but is able to handle acute crisis to the interim care, to where they're just about sitting, standing, getting ready to go out. And remember, this is a community mental wellness housing session. So what are the efforts? So at this point, we're not able to share much information to you about the new psychiatric hospital, but we can tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're envisioning. So the continuum of care is moving forward. So I want to put the spotlight and continue pressure now on my buddy Nathan. So please don't be shy, ask questions when Leticia lets you, because she may not let you right away. Nathan, it's all yours.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Do I have to lean in? Good. So y'all are probably wondering why an architect is so pivotal to this. Thanks, Gilbert. But we really are working hand in hand with your community leaders at the county level and those in your mental health community to really develop what this vision looks like. Most of you have probably never heard of HKS. Most architecture firms are just a gobbledygook of letters. That's how we like to roll. We're a firm that designs things like SoFi Stadium or the Cowboys Stadium or other things like that. My work, most people will never hear of because I specialize in environments for mental and behavioral health care. That is what I've devoted my career to, and so I'm very pleased to be working with such a devoted group of leaders here in Bexar County and in San Antonio. So we're going to go ahead and dive in a little bit here. I'm going to take the history lesson a little further back. So this is the San Antonio State Hospital campus. It's in the southeast portion of your city. If you've never ventured over there, I would not be surprised. A lot of people have never really been on that campus or probably somewhat oblivious to what's going on there. Texas has many state hospital campuses. They're in the process of redoing a lot of those. There's been a lot of additional funding, but there's been a huge gap in that level of care, right? I'm going to take this all the way back to JFK. So the last bill that JFK actually signed before his assassination was one aimed at community mental health care. It actually defunded a lot of the state institutional facilities like this hospital here and was moving towards that community model of care. Unfortunately, we kind of got left in limbo and the funding never really followed through to develop this holistic community-centered care model. So we've kind of been stuck in this state, which has led to an extreme amount of crisis in many levels of our care systems. So what you see here, so there's kind of the old West Campus kind of on the upper left-hand portion of that, some of the oldest buildings, almost 100 years old. Then we've got the plaza kind of in the center of that cluster of buildings, which is where most of the patients are currently housed. And then just immediately adjacent to that, kind of that puzzle piece looking building there, that is the new state hospital, which our company designed as well. So that is 300 beds all under one roof, a much more modern continuum of care, and a much better environment for those patients. But as Gilbert pointed out, it does not increase the capacity. So nice, but we can do better, right? So let's go to the next one. So a continuum of care really is what we're talking about, all of these different environments and systems that wrap around a patient to support them through their journey in the care system, right? They may go forward, they may go backwards a little bit. Hopefully we can progress them towards recovery and reintegration with the community at large. But what you see here, and if you can't read it, I wouldn't worry too much about it. The point is, it's kind of complicated. There are a lot of steps along the way, and this is just the treatment environments. What this really doesn't address is what we call the social determinants of health and all those other support systems at a community level that really help uplift those individuals and those patients to be able to succeed in their treatment. If you look at the homelessness problems, people will talk about a housing first model, right? We've got to give them the supports for them to be able to actually succeed and gain their footing and progress forward. It's the same kind of mentality here in the mental health care spectrum. So going to the next one. So this is kind of just a brief look at what those social determinants of health actually contain. So you've got 6 pillars really, and there's an entire field of medicine that's really devoted to study and implementation of this. The healthcare system in itself is 1 of 6. So if we focus all our efforts on that, we're not going to succeed. So in order to really succeed towards wellness and fully support our community members and our neighbors and all of those who are really going to deal with mental illness in their lifetime, we've got to address this entire spectrum. So that's housing, that's education, that's access to food. All of these things are vitally important, right? Move on to the next one. So here in San Antonio, you guys are actually remarkably progressive in a lot of ways versus the rest of the state. I hail from Fort Worth. We're nowhere near as advanced in many of these things as what you guys are doing. This is the Multi-Assistance Center, the MAC. And this is an institution or a community center, really, for individuals dealing with disabilities. And this is a fantastic model of what we're talking about. So it takes that wraparound level of care, and this is a place where they can come, they can hang out, they can get assistance on the medical level, but also on that social level. They can build connections, they can get employment assistance, legal aid, all sorts of other things. And so how do we do that and wrap that around? What I'm concerned about is how do we actually craft an environment that is capable of doing that and build a community? And what we're looking at is that existing SASH campus, right? So that's what the county commissioners have brought us in to do. And so going to the next one, we actually came down this spring and kicked off this process. So it takes a lot of effort. Thank Gilbert and his group. They were able to kind of wrangle really a room about this size with as many people of all your community leaders in mental health. And we spent 3 days with everybody trapped in a room, going through different work sessions and understanding what are the needs of your community, what are the actual drivers, and what's the dream, right? We want to dream big. We don't want to aim small. We want to dream big. And your leaders are dreaming very large. They've got some very big goals for this. So we went through that in all these different sessions. We also met with members of the community, had an open forum where they could come and give input. We're planning on doing that again as we get further along. We're still in process of that. You can kind of see what some of that process looks like and asking specific questions and getting different kinds of feedback. And we take that. We've issued a report that's all publicly available through the Commissioner's Court if you want to dive it more in detail of what we've gathered thus far. And then from there, we went and toured the existing facility. So this is, you see a picture of some of those older buildings there in our group going through and just understanding. There's a lot of history at that campus, honestly, that has served Bexar County in the state of Texas for many, many years. So we will want to respect that. We actually have had our team of architects and engineers out there this week going in depth through these buildings, surveying and trying to understand what we can reuse and what potentially may need to just be torn down and make way for some new things. So let's take a look again at kind of the existing site plan. So what you see, the kind of the care model back in the day was really this kind of country estate, right? Did kind of two things. The idea was, one, it was very therapeutic just to have this kind of rolling countryside and have your treatment in that type of setting. But at the same time, it also removed people from the community, which is not a good thing, right? We want to actually keep those ties to the community. That's how you build resiliency long term. So we're looking to address those two things. Go on to the next one. So this is kind of where we're at currently. And really kind of infilling a lot of those spaces, looking to reuse a lot of those existing buildings. So you can see down adjacent to the new state hospital, where Gilbert was talking about, we're looking at a new forensic hospital as well, an additional 300 beds there, which would serve at the county level. And then you can kind of see the fan-shaped one. That would be the inpatient civil hospital. 100 bed is what we're looking at that portion. And then north of that is this community center that we're talking about, including housing and all the different things. In all total, like I said, they were dreaming big. This is what we've assembled thus far. It amounts to about 1 million square feet of programming. Between all of these different things. So this is a huge potential investment by your county and by your community to address this systemic need in a new way. And right now, this campus is really kind of a locked down facility. You can't just go visit and drive in. There's a guard post and all that. What we want to do is really open that up a little bit more. We want to integrate that with the community. We want people to be able to come there, receive outpatient treatment, but also, if they're in the forensic system, be able to progress forward into those lower acuities, have the supportive housing, the assistive housing, have those community supports where they can move from that back into the community at large, and then still have that system level of supports and community built around them when they do need to come back and visit. They've got those supports for them. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Great, now we will move on to Edward Gonzales.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you to Nathan and the work that they're doing. I think it's important. I'm glad that he went before me because he has great visuals, right? An architect has great visuals, and now you get the not so great visuals. So I think everything that Nathan really described is critical process and critical work for some of the things that I'm going to show you and illustrate to what we're doing with our project, the Town Twin Village. So Town Twin Village is actually located, I'm honored, let me step back. I'm honored to say that we're actually doing this work, right? It's here, it's happening, we're operating it. I've had similar talks like this in the past where we talk about, I was in Nathan's spot, right, a couple of years ago about saying, this is what we're doing to plan for it, and this is how we're going to make it happen. And now I'm in a position to be able to show you the great work that process can lead to, right? So I'm honored to be able to be in that point within the project. So Town Twin Village is located in the east side of San Antonio. It's actually inside city limits in Council District 2 and County Precinct number 4. And this is a permanent supportive housing development. What does that mean? So permanent supportive housing is primarily a strategy for individuals that are unhoused, right? So the homeless population. It's an intervention and a strategy to house them, right? So one of the tenets and one of the goals of anyone that's unhoused is to get them housing, right? But the secret sauce of permanent supportive housing is really the supportive services that are wrapped around those housing interventions. We are considered what's considered housing first. So what does that mean? A little bit about that. So we are trying to remove all of the barriers to housing that you and I face, but also the unhoused population would face. So we're talking about broken leases in the past. That doesn't matter to us. Bad credit. That doesn't matter to us. No income, we understand that, we know that. We have expectations that folks are not gonna have income when they come into transitioning from being unhoused to a home, right? So those things and the myriad of other things that go with being unhoused for a year, a month, let alone 8 years, right? So I'll share with you that we have 43 residents on campus. Those 43 residents, there's an average of homelessness about 8 years. So folks that are our residents have been on the street of San Antonio for more than 8 years. And I'll also share that our population, we're focusing on with folks that are over 50 years of age. There's a couple of gentlemen that I've been having the pleasure to build a relationship with. And those individuals are 90 years old. And it's unimaginable for me to just visualize those people on the street. let alone in 109-degree weather, and kind of just competing with all of those things, mobility issues, and some of you that were in the past session that we were here in before talked about some of those things. So we see all of that. So this is a visual of the area. We're building a community. If you can go ahead and go to the next. So our community is built out into 3 interventions, or 3 housing types. The first is RVs, the second is tiny homes, and the third is multifamily apartment style units. All the units are relatively the same size. So we're not trying to make winners and losers out of folks. Everyone gets the same, but there's a little bit of choice. So there's choice for folks that traditionally do not have options or very much choice in their lives, right? Their choice is really about where am I going to try to get my next meal. So that we're transitioning and transcending that from where would you like to live? We have these 3 different options. We have a RV, we have a tiny home, and we have an apartment. And those folks that are coming to our property are choosing each one of those, right? So for different reasons. So let me talk a little bit about the tiny homes. That picture you just saw was actually what they look like, right? So they're about 500 square feet. They're built in clusters. They're organized in a way that builds community amongst a community that are folks that have felt very isolated in the past, right? So they're folks that I was talking to an individual. We moved in, and I said, "How are you liking it? You need anything?" He's like, "I'm just happy that somebody tells me good morning, every day." So we're building that community. All of the homes come fully furnished. So the next picture there is actually the interior picture of one of the houses. So that is what somebody that walks in sees their first day. So we understand that folks are, they're transitioning, and there's value in having a certain level of dignity. I think there's also high quality standards that our organization has put as a tenet and value, right? So we want to create infrastructure that's lasting, but we also wanted to make it feel like home, right? So we don't have a lot of institutional buildings, although we have commercial buildings where we're providing supportive service. We're trying to alleviate that trauma from most folks' past, where they have been to an institutional setting, and some of those settings are not very pleasant. They have very bad experiences in those. So everything on campus looks like a house, right? It may be a very big house, but it looks like a house. It's very warming and inviting, and we want folks to feel comfortable in those. Next. This is the trailers. This is actually what our trailers look like, right? So that's the interior of the trailer. A little bit smaller than a tiny home, obviously, because you can only have 8 foot by 25 feet. But folks are choosing this, and folks are thriving in these units as well. They come fully furnished. These are a little bit, most of you know about how a trailer looks inside, but I'll tell you that most of the folks that are going here are more ambulatory. So they're folks that can get around on their own. They don't have issues taking a shower, and the individuals that have more acute medical needs and more ambulatory issues are taking the tiny homes, because the tiny homes are a little bit larger. They're ADA compliant. We have features like we use universal design, so switches and light switches, and all of that's been very intentionally planned out and laid out through help of professionals like Nathan and engineers, etc. Next. So again, supportive services, that's really this. I'll say there's 2 secret sauces. One is a supportive service, and I think the other is just love, right? It's just the compassion that you share towards helping somebody transition out of homelessness. So I'll tell you that a number of folks, everyone that's coming as a new resident is suffering from behavioral health issues. They're suffering from mental health issues. They're suffering from alcoholism, and that's okay. It's okay. Our motto is, once you get a house over your head, and you're not worried about where you're going to get your next meal, and you're not worried about somebody stealing your stuff at night, then eventually you'll start to settle, right? Eventually you'll take advantage of the service that's right down, right in across the road, right, on the campus. And that's the secret, right? So we're starting to see that. We've moved our first residents in April. And, you know, there's folks that I know have alcohol issues, right? And first couple of weeks, I'm like, okay, you need anything? No, I'm good. They haven't gone. And I can see them trying to kind of do it on their own, right? The path. We're saying, look, we have professionals here that can help you through those things. Why don't you talk to Jim over here? He's right down the street. I'm going to introduce you to him. Okay, yes, well, let's take advantage of that. Jim's here every Tuesday or every Wednesday. Why don't you meet him? And it's more informal meeting, right? And it's very resident driven. If I give this example that, you know, if somebody tells me to go to an appointment, unless it's for work or for professionally, I may not do that until I'm ready, right? If somebody says, hey, I get calls from the dentist, like it's time to get their dental appointment. I don't go right the next day. I take time, and when it's on my pace, I say, okay, let me schedule this and let me go. That's the motto that we have, because everything needs to be resident driven, and then we have more successful outcomes with that. I could talk like for hours, but I know the time is limited. But I wanted to share a little piece of how these things work. I think those of you that have been part of the sessions earlier this morning, and even part of what Nathan talked about, this is really the reality of us. I think some secret sauce that we want to share with all of you. The other big tenet is that go ahead and go to the next slide. We can't do this on our own, right? So this is a community. Our nonprofit, although our village is called Town-Towne Village, the nonprofit is called the Housing First Community Coalition. And that was a very intentional naming process, because it takes the community to do the work that we're doing here. We're not professionals in mental health support. So we asked the mental health professionals to come partner with us. We're not professionals in dental care. So we asked those professionals that are to come and help us. Same thing with peer support. We may have a little bit expertise in that, but we're not. We're professionals in love and compassion. So that's the piece that we're going to take. So this, I'm going to leave you with this. This was kind of a Wordle, I think it's called. This was something that we created our white paper, our kind of case study on all of the work that we were doing around the community, getting input, and we wrote that down and said, this is what we want to execute. And these are some of the words that came out of that. So I thought it was important just to kind of show that and see some of these things that were important to us. You know, obviously Town-Towne Village is all over it, but housing first, homelessness, intentional design, compassionate community, helping those unhoused with dignity and compassion and respect. So, thank you.
Come on, Maury, you can do it. The mic.
There you go, sir.
Okay, I'm not really supposed to know what I'm supposed to do up here, so after following Town-Towne, it's hard. My name is Mark Carmona. I'm the Chief Housing Officer for the City of San Antonio. So I'll bring a different perspective to this today. So really my role, my job, is to oversee the successful implementation of our housing plan and our homeless plan for the whole community. So our work is really done through partnerships, collaboration, and resources. Our community was blessed, in my opinion, last May when you all voters decided to approve a housing bond of $150 million, 25 million of that. Thank you. It's you all did that. 25 million of that for permanent supportive housing. I've been doing this work a while. When I first got here, the first person I saw was Ed Dickey. And I think Ed's in the audience today. If you know Ed, you're blessed. But he's been doing this work a long time, and we were marveling how far all of this has come where mental health now is front page in a positive way, and not where you're being, looked down upon, or it's like, oh, it's mental health. Where I was telling them the county judge in Houston is taking a break because she was suffering from depression. She was going to come back in September, but what a bold statement, what a big statement for a leader to come out and say, everybody needs some time out. So I say that because I appreciate the fact that voters saw the need for that in our community and decided to go forward. So Gilbert Gonzales one day calls me and he says, we have this idea about a campus that can really have a holistic view at community services. And we obviously have a vision around how to integrate homelessness and housing. It's my belief that we're not going to solve our homeless issue without housing. And it's just not going to happen. We have to have housing. If we're going to talk to people and engage them on the street and ask them to give us a chance to serve them, we have to have that housing option. If they're ready to leave in an encampment where their friends are at, where their community's at, we have to have housing. Whether that's low barrier housing, moving into permanent supportive housing long-term, we have to have those options. So what the SASH opportunity represents for us, I think, is not just the housing piece of it. I mean, our interest clearly is building out permanent supportive housing on that campus. But what's bigger for me, and really a lot of the work that I do every day is kind of at a systems level. Housing is not an island. Housing's connected to healthcare, it's connected to transportation, it's connected to workforce training, it's connected to behavioral health, physical health. You need all of those things, but for someone to really engage in, for example, mental health treatment, just like Edward just talked about, they have to have a roof over their head, I think. They have to believe, like, I'm not going to have to be sleeping with one eye open every night to see if my stuff's going to be taken, or whatever the case may be. So it's a fundamental. But Edward also talked about the secret sauce of supportive services. And I think that's what this campus represents for us, is the county, whether you know it or not, for the last 20 years, we've been doing this too long, Gilbert, 20 years, has really built up probably the deepest, most effective mental health system in the United States. Let me say that again. The county has built out the most effective behavioral health system in the United States here in Bexar County. Yes. A lot of that credit goes to Commissioner Paul Elizondo, who's passed away, but he was a driving force in all of that, but across the whole community. So when you think about this, think about housing that would be available permanently for some people. And keep in mind, permanent supportive housing for some people is permanent. Some people will need it for the rest of their lives. Most people coming through will pass through. They'll be there 6 months, they could be there a year. But at Town Twin, there probably will be some people that will be there for the rest of their lives. And that's fine. That's what it's designed to do. But the supportive community aspect is essential. I was facilitating the last panel and people were talking about that. There has to be a sense of community. And I think that's what this opportunity, in my mind, comes up with. That's what I see. Mental health services, workforce training, child care. When Gilbert talks about kind of an opportunity of a lifetime, it really is. Because we have this space now, and people have a vision now of how we can outfit this. I mean, think about it. You're in your housing, you need a supportive service, it's across the street. You need health care, it's down the street. Your support group is meeting in an hour. You have this over here in this time. You're training for a job that maybe is in the Brooks area. All of this is here. And I think for me, it speaks to hope. I have hope now that my life can change, that I'm not stuck in this circle. I'm diagnosed, I live with severe depression, And it's a very black, dark place, and without hope. But I can say today, because I have community, that I'm in a different spot. Because of people that I'm up here with and people that I know that are here today that have played a role in my life. But just think about that exponentially across our whole community. People living with mental illness can contribute to society. They do contribute to society every day. But they don't brag about it. They don't boast about it. They just do it. And we want to work. We want to contribute. But we need support. We need community. We need services. Some of us maybe haven't worked in a while, but we want to. So for us at the city, I think looking at this opportunity, it's supportive housing connects to many systems. This SASH opportunity brings housing, brings county services. It's a continuum of services. We have 95,000 households in our community that are cost burdened, meaning that they spend more than 30% of their take-home pay on housing. And in San Antonio, it's more like 35%, 34 to 35%. Think about that. 35% of your take-home pay is spent on your housing. Makes it difficult when you're thinking, after you take care of your housing, is it gonna be food? Is it gonna be prescription medication for our abuela that lives with us or another family member? How are you gonna take care of your meds if you're on medication? What does that look like? We need to be creating an environment where housing is affordable for people so they don't have to make those choices. This type of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity allows people to live and then to move. You know, I think of housing, I guess this will be my final statement, I think of housing as a continuum from people that are starting at emergency homeless shelter, like Haven for Hope, all the way to market rate housing. That's the whole continuum. That's what we have to focus on. Because people that are at Town Twin or people that will be at this campus once the vision is carried out, some will want to move on, and we need to make sure there's enough affordable housing stock in our city for them to be able to do that. You know, that way they can create their own memories, their own communities. But with this continuum of services, what's going to be important, and for us, it's what's very attractive, along with the state's participation. I didn't even mention the state and all the services that that can bring to bear as well. So I think anyone that I've ever talked to about this concept, this idea is excited because people are bringing what they do best to the table. And my job is really finding organizations that want to collaborate, having people get in their lane, asking them what they need, and then getting out of the way and letting them do their job. Thank you.
Questions. If anyone has a question and who you want to refer it to?
My question is for David. On the map of staff, there's a lot of area on the south towards military. What's there now? Is there any plans for that area?
There's a number of areas kind of on all sides, honestly, that have been sold off for other development. So I can't quite tell you what those are. There's some other facilities on the south side as well that are existing and those will continue to.
Might have been sold.
Anybody, what's the percentage of people that can get off the street? You can't save everybody.
So the city, we presented, we're in the process of presenting our budget right now for the city of San Antonio. So the city's going to invest some additional dollars into the homeless issue, the unhoused. So according to our point in time count, which is a one night snapshot, we had 875 people unhoused and on the street. Our goal for this year is to move 400 into housing. So if we're successful, we'll have 400 less people that are on the street and in the housing.
I've got a friend who's out on the street, been out there about 4 years now. Unmedicated, they're schizophrenic. Help that kind of person.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think that just more detail for you for that, so that you can help, obviously, is there are professionals within the city that are designated for council district, right? So we have outreach professionals that are assigned to each council district. So depending on where that person stays at night, you could reach out to them and they can connect and start building a relationship with that person. And if they already have a relationship, even better, right? But those folks are the primary touch points for bringing them into a community like Councilman Village, right? Because we look to them to take those folks from the street and describe what it is to kind of make it a little bit less scary. You know, folks that are living unhoused are very untrusting, right? And rightfully so. So those outreach folks are the ones that build that trust, and they can describe and say, look, I promise you, I'm telling you, what I'm telling you is the truth. And the more residents that we bring on campus, the more trust we're building amongst the unhoused community. Because I don't know how it happens, but they talk. And I've had folks that have not been to, they're not residents, they come and visit Concord and said, I want to come, my buddy's in 202, and he told me that it's everything he told me it was good. So reach out.
So there's a couple of other things that are happening in Gestalt, the implementation of co-responder programs for police, fire, EMS, sheriff's deputies, fire, EMS, SMART, SA Care. So those things are all happening. But I'd like to ask you to think of this as a sort of a Gestalt, a continuum of care. And one of the things that I'll ask you to do is you can help. Right now, we have a supportive city council, we have supportive commissioners court, but they continuously need to understand that this is a complex issue that we need to address mental illness as a continuum of care and with continuity of care. So let me explain. Continuum of care means, okay, well, you can provide this kind of therapy and this kind of medication and this kind of rehab and this kind of, so it's the components. The continuity of care is honestly where we have totally failed. And that is, we provide someone some treatment for a week, or if we're lucky, 2 weeks, or in some cases, maybe even 30 days. But what happens is after that's gone, it's gone. There's no support, and the person loses the support. So we have to continue to clarify the fact that we are in this long term. We have to provide the services at the red light, at the yellow light, and at the green light as a community, because it is a total fallacy to imply that we're going to fix mental illness unless we do that. If we understand the fact that all of us are parents, and the one thing parents want above all else is for their children to be safe, prosperous, and at least have a future to the highest level possible. That's what we want for everyone.
Yes.
I have a question for
Okay, yes.
what is your capacity?
So, great question. So we hope to have 207 units by the end of next year. We're building out right now, so we will have about 167 units by this time in June. So yeah, I mean, I think to just give you a sense of the case, it also goes to the question about statistics, right? So we're 20% of the current need, right? So the current need of permits for housing for individuals is about 1,000 units, right? Over the next so many years, and that could change, that changes, right? So we're 20%, that means that we cannot be the only game in town. There's other developments that we support, like Sam Ministries has a development very much similar to what we're doing, and we support the work that they're doing. So yes, so that's our capacity. We are inviting folks in periods, right, month by month. So over the next 12 months, every month, we try to open up additional units to bring folks in because it takes time and it takes a very intentional welcoming, right? So we want to give as much attention to those folks that we're bringing in as possible for at least the first 30 days. It's just a real big hug for folks. And as they stabilize, then we go to those supportive services.
And just real briefly, can you just touch on when you talk about peer support, what does that look like?
Great, yeah, so it has different levels, right? So it's different for every person, but we partner with farm communities, as I saw some folks that were here. And again, we're not the experts at a lot of those things. So farm communities has partnered with us, and they come and they start off really small, right? So they're here, they're on campus on Wednesdays, and they have coffee with folks, and they're interacting in the community just like everybody else is. And they're having conversations, and as they build their relationships, we've already gotten into some of the more deeper sharing of experience, right? So you kind of see that happening with folks saying, look, and it's not only sharing a negative experience, it's also about sharing those very positive experiences of how they transitioned from a very dark place in their life to where they're doing now a very successful place. So we offer those spaces for those things to happen, but that's what that peer support looks like.
Thank you so much.
I think you were next.
It's Peter Nombre. Thank you, gentlemen, for all the work you do in the presentation today. My question is for Mark. Mark, I was on the Housing Committee, and we worked really hard on the permanent supportive housing, and we knew it wasn't enough money. We were carving out for it. But we knew that it would work because of supportive services. And that was something we really pushed to be sure that each housing bond project had good supportive services. What's the current pipeline for funding, and what's the next project, and have we identified locations in the city? I know something, Edward, that you shared with me, which is beneficial, and you charged me as well, Mark. Go back to the community and be an advocate for that in my backyard. And I don't know, Edward, if you can share your perspective on that and how you were able to overcome that in your community. You shared it with me, and I'd just like you to share it with everyone. That's my question: what's the funding stream, and what are the next projects?
Thank you, Pastor. Pastor Pedro Nofre, who served on the Citizens Housing Bond Committee, and also served on the review panels for different applications that we had for the housing bond. So, Pastor, thank you for your service. So with regard to permanent supportive housing, this is, when I said earlier, we do part of our work through collaboration. We had $25 million in the housing bond identified for permanent supportive housing. But then our partners at the county came forward and said, look, this is a need for us as well. Why create two different requests for proposals? The county said, we'll put our money in with your money. We had another 10 million or so from, I think the county's was about 10 million. So we had another 8 or 9 million. So we had close to 45 million from the first 25. That's the whole power of leveraging for permanent supportive housing. So SAM Ministries, well, first of all, Town Twin received some funding for really laying out the infrastructure, I think, for the second phase of their construction. So that way they can move faster once that's all laid out, which they're moving really quickly. I don't know what the current capacity is, but they're bringing in people monthly, which is great. The Hudson was another project with SAM Ministries over in the north side around Blanco Road. And then also SAM Ministries is building out a 200-unit facility called the Common, it's a SACES, over by Brooks City Base. So not far from SASH. But they've actually bought land, and they're kind of doing some master planning kind of work themselves. So we still have some funding available. I think part of that we're looking at possibly with this collaboration with the county and the state as a possibility. But then there's also people that are coming forward with some ideas on ways that we can generate more permanent supportive housing, to include hopefully an emerging partnership with our local public housing authority, Opportunity Home, who has housing vouchers that can be converted to project-based vouchers, which are essential for permanent supportive housing because that voucher stays with the unit. which makes that development a lot more affordable to build. So if I give Edward, or if Edward's awarded 20 project-based vouchers, he can extend and do more with that in terms of his own development. So that's something that's emerging as well. And I'll let Edward speak to the NIMBY. We're working on some stuff, but I'll let him start.
Sure, I think the NIMBY is an issue that you're gonna experience with every project. Our project was, I think by the grace of God, actually, there was strategy around it. And I think the strategy was being very open and honest and transparent with the neighbors and being the first to notify. So we did a lot of block walking to notify, this is what's happening, we're looking at buying this property, and this is what we're gonna do here. And being very honest about answering questions about, well, is crime gonna increase? And I got that question a lot, and I said, I don't know, it might. But I can guarantee you if there's issues within our residents, then we're gonna address those. And here's my number, and I guarantee you I'll answer the phone, and I guarantee you we'll get back to you. So I think just being honest and being the first to know, because the community, if you're not the first to know, if you're the second to know, if you hear it on the news, you're not the first to know. So we intentionally made sure that we said, do you have any questions? Talking to those folks, even extending the radius. So we went not only to the neighborhood association immediately around us, but we went to neighborhood associations that were just interested in knowing what we're doing, because they spread the word as well. And they were getting questions about what's happening over there on the east side. And they say, oh, I know exactly what's happening because I went over there. So I think that's the biggest, I think that's the best strategy at this point, because people have angst, and I'll tell you it is. I mean, people are worried about what happens, when my child's gonna go to school. Are they gonna be walking by? They ride the bus, right? Are they gonna be walking by a bunch of homeless people laying on the street? And what I respond to that is that, we're gonna have an active community, and we're building that, and we want you to build that with us. Yes, we are not a prison. We don't lock the gates and tell people they can't leave. People leave in the morning. They take the bus. They go on the bus and take off. But they're not loitering around the neighborhood like an unhoused guest or unhoused resident, because they don't have a place to go. So we have a place to go. They go into their homes during the day, right? They're in air conditioning, just like you and I. They're not out on the street. So that's the biggest difference. And then the other is about building community, and and not just the community amongst the residents, because we want residents to build relationships with folks that have similar experience, but also building the community to the neighbors that are outside our gates. We're gonna have our first National Night Out event in October, and that's gonna be the first big push where we're saying, we told you, remember, a couple years ago, that when we did our block walking, that this was not only for unhoused guests, but it was also for the neighborhood. This is the first event we're having for the neighborhood. Come eat hot dogs, break bread with us, and let's also, bring your children, because there may be a bouncy house or whatever that is. So I think that's important.
I would just add that we really need to get from not in my backyard NIMBY to yes in my backyard YIMBY. That should be our goal. The city has some funds to put out a public information campaign, but it takes every one of us understanding what this is and then talking to people. Talk to your network of people that you know, your circle of influence, people that come to your house for a barbecue or come to hang out, or at your church. Talk about what this really is, because people are locked into a mindset of what they think it is, but your ability to talk about this in plain terms and show examples and take people to places makes a huge, huge difference.
And I think the big advantage also is that there's a lot of faith-based organizations that own this land, right? So the biggest issue is like, oh, I want to acquire this property, and you have folks that are opposed to that acquisition. You have faith communities and congregations that own this land. There's no, if you're part of that congregation, you can help support and support the positive word. And that's another barrier that you don't have to overcome.
So the path forward is hope. And just very briefly, in 2014, county leadership established a behavioral health department, a department focused entirely daily to behavioral health. They added $3 million to that. Fast forward, we now have an operating responsibility of $108 million that are going towards criminal justice and behavioral health, and the resolution there, part of which includes the San Antonio redesign. In addition to that is $20 million for school-based mental wellness. In addition to that is $12 to $14 million for substance abuse. So we are in a place where we can move forward. And the last thing I'd like to do is just thank you for being here and to say, we're not there yet, but you can help us get there by letting people know what you heard today.